You know,
This is an ABC News special report.
Hello again, everybody. I'm Peter Jennings at ABC News headquarters, and this is John Ashcroft, the Attorney General. We haven't picked up his sound yet, but here it is.
But about a tragic loss the Department of Justice family suffered last night. An assistant United States attorney in the Western District of Washington, Tom Wales, was shot and killed last night. Tom had worked for the U.S. Attorney's Office in Seattle for the last 18 years. At this time, the case is being investigated. We have no knowledge of motive or any further details. Our thoughts and prayers go out to Tom's family and to the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Western District of Washington. I have several announcements to make today regarding the continuing efforts of the Department of Justice to ensure the safety and security of Americans in the light of the continuing terrorist threat. First, a federal grand jury in Phoenix, Arizona returned yesterday and unsealed today a 2-count indictment against a Tempe man, Faisal Michael al-Salmi, for giving false statements to the FBI in connection with our investigation into the terrorist attacks on September the 11th. Mr. al-Salmi is in federal custody in New York and will be returned to Arizona to face charges. This indictment serves as a reminder that the Department of Justice will bring the full weight of the law upon those who attempt to impede or hinder this investigation. Lying or attempting to conceal information from federal investigators will not be tolerated. We will spare no legal means to identify, locate, and incapacitate terrorists and those who aid and abet them in their criminal activity. Second, the United States Attorney's Office in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania filed a motion yesterday charging Argenbright Holdings, also known as Securicor, with violation of the terms of a sentence that company received less than a year ago for an astonishing pattern of crimes that could have directly jeopardized public safety. The motion concludes that Argenbright Holdings continues to violate laws that protect the safety of Americans who travel by commercial airlines. The Department of Justice investigation reveals that Argenbright Holdings has committed new Federal Aviation Administration regulatory violations at 13 airports throughout the United States, including Washington, both Dulles International and Reagan National, Boston, Logan International, New York, LaGuardia, Los Angeles, Trenton, Detroit, Phoenix, Las Vegas, Columbus, Dallas-Fort Worth, Seattle, and Cedar Rapids. Our investigation shows Argenbright Holdings has hired pre-departure screeners who have disqualifying criminal convictions, including convictions for theft, burglary, and illegal drug possession, and that Argenbright Holdings made false statements about its employees' backgrounds. Now, members of the Justice Department have conferred with the Inspector General of the Department of Transportation and with authorities at the Federal Aviation Administration. The Inspector General is conducting an assessment of procedures and practices and operations and personnel at other airports other than at the Philadelphia airport. In the event of non-compliance, we will prosecute aggressively to secure the safety of the public. Americans who pass through our nation's airports and who travel on our nation's airlines must and will be protected. Security companies at our airports will be held accountable for their actions. The Justice Department will enforce the law fully and vigorously to protect Americans. Finally, I want today to commend the United States Senate for passing the administration's anti-terrorism bill with overwhelming support, 96-1, to give law enforcement the additional anti-terrorism tools we need, to give us additional tools, the tools we need to deter and disrupt terrorism. The House of Representatives should act today as well. Congress needs to send a message to terrorists that they will find no safe haven in America. Again, our anti-terrorism task forces need tough new laws now to defeat terrorists. I ask the congressional leadership to send the president a bill to sign right away. I can say with enthusiasm that they should not delay. We need these anti-terrorism tools now. While the Department of Justice's actions represent the government's ongoing efforts to protect the public, Americans must be mindful of the threat of additional terrorist acts and be mindful of the fact that such a threat is real. The alert issued yesterday by the FBI should promote caution, not incite alarm. All possible measures are being taken to detect and prevent future attacks, to both incapacitate and deter would-be terrorists. Americans can assist in this effort by going about their lives with a heightened sense of vigilance and a renewed sense of responsibility for their neighbors, coworkers, and communities. Each of us is affected by the threat of terror. It's a threat that continues to darken our country, but we can brighten our opportunities by being more aware, more alert, and we can mitigate the threat by cooperating and working well together. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Two questions. First, Mr. Al-Salmi from Arizona. What did he lie about? What is his connection to the case? And secondly, there are reports today that there may have been some trucks stolen around the nation. I'm curious if there are any warnings that have gone to law enforcement and whether you consider this a serious threat.
I'm not prepared to make remarks about the charges against Mr. Salmi that are outside the nature of the complaint that's been filed against him. Secondly, we're always concerned about unaccounted for trucks. Stolen trucks, obviously, would be a matter of concern to us, but we have not, to my knowledge, made a special notation in terms of informing law enforcement.
That one of the hijackers was located near where the anthrax was found in Florida, that one of the hijackers might have been at a drugstore with red hands and that type of thing. Can you tell us whether there has been any connection made between the anthrax cases down in Florida and the hijackers?
We have not been able to develop information which would allow us to draw a conclusion about a connection between the anthrax cases in Florida, meaning the one setting where 3 or 4 anthrax-related situations have existed, either that case in Florida or the case which was mentioned earlier today in New York. We have established separate criminal investigations, but we are promoting communication between them so that in the event that we see similarities or other indicia that indicates that there perhaps is, in fact, a relationship, that would be understood by the operations and the investigations.
Attorney General, you and the President keep saying that we should go about our normal lives, but when you give warnings that say anyone with a cut on their hand or a lesion on their hand should call their doctor, how...
I don't think anyone, if you'll just pardon me, I don't think we've said that. I think I was with the Secretary of Health and Human Services when he said anyone with a lesion that had certain characteristics of redness, that was dark in the middle, and they had reason to suspect. That's a different thing. I mean, if your skin is as fragile as mine, I can't put a trowel in the garden without drawing blood, and it's not that kind of situation.
Okay, well, I'm glad you explained that a little bit more, because, of course, the second part of my question is, how do you keep people from panicking over every little cut?
Well, frankly, we want people to do what they can do. And people want to do what they can do, and they need to know what to do. And one of our challenges is, didn't know why I brought this poster with me, but for instance, this is a little poster that's been put out by the FBI. It was put out over a year ago, I believe, sometime in the year 2000, regarding mail, which may appear suspicious. These are the ways to sort of evaluate the mail. And today, when we were at the department with Secretary Thompson, we had the officials from the Postal Service to talk about things you should do if you have mail that arouses in you a sense of suspicion. Look for a return address. If it's not familiar to you, try calling the people at the return address. Try finding out whether it is really anticipated mail or gratuitously appears. And then there are items of advice. I don't want to go back through sort of the litany of things that can be done, but I want to say this, that we have to learn to be both more alert and to continue with our lives at the same time. We're doing that as it relates to air transportation. We are going to be more alert to security at the airports, but we're not going to cease to fly. We're going to be more alert in a variety of aspects of our existence, but we're not going to cease to live. We are going to, and it'll take some adjustment in that respect. We're going to be more alert to the way in which we look at mail. I'm sure that's the case, but we're not going to cease to use or operate using the mails. Yeah, sure.
Have you gotten any evidence or intelligence since yesterday's warning that would indicate the likelihood of further attacks over the next several days?
I'm not going to comment on the kinds of intelligence we get. I don't think it's productive for me to try and get into assessments of that. When we feel that information that we receive is sufficiently credible and valuable to the American public, we'll provide as much advice as we can, particularly to the law enforcement agencies and to the security agencies. We do have the NLET system, which is an immediate notification to 18,000 law enforcement agencies in the country, and we have a special system known as ANSWER, which is our connection with about 40,000 corporate security organizations. And we think sharing information is important, but we also are very careful about sharing things unnecessarily or sharing intelligence.
The Attorney General John Ashcroft bringing us up to date in his, appeared a couple of times now today, and saying again that a general alert for possibility of terrorist activity is still in existence. They never want to discuss intelligence itself. But a very good question from one reporter there: how can the country get on about its life when there are these various causes for alarm, and certainly a good deal of anxiety in the country, including the report here in New York City today of another exposure to anthrax. But primarily, the Attorney General there talks about the indictment of one individual in the investigation of the events of September the 11th. They brought suit against a company which they find is simply not offering satisfying security at a number of the nation's airports, both large and small, and complimenting the Senate for passing the anti-terrorist bill, which enlarges the powers of the Justice Department, and putting some pressure on the House of Representatives to get on with it as well and get a bill to President Bush, which he can sign. 96-1 it was in the Senate in favor of expanding the Justice Department's powers. And I think for the moment that is about it. We'll keep you up to date all the time. There's a lot of information at abcnews.com, and we will review the day in full, if we can, during World News Tonight. I'm Peter Jennings. Thanks for joining us.
For continuing coverage of this story, stay with ABC News and abcnews.com on the web. This has been a special report from ABC News.
Tonight, don't miss Miss Stephen Weber's heart-stopping return as Judy's unforgettable flame. Tonight on Once and Again at 10, 9 Central, right after Thieves on ABC.